Welcome to the Audacity to Age, where becoming never gets old. I'm Kristie Crenshaw, and this is a place for women who believe life's most meaningful chapters aren't behind them, they're being written right now. Together, we'll explore the stories, lessons learned, reinventions, and unexpected joys that come with life after 50. Together, we'll challenge old thinking, embrace new possibilities, and discover what it means to age with purpose, curiosity, originality, and verve. So grab your coffee, lace up your walking shoes, or settle into your favorite chair. This is the Audacity to Age. So let's dive into my 40s. Now, I may have fudged a little bit on wrapping up my 30s because the 30s were a really tough decade. And I met my husband at 37, almost 38. So I kind of roll him into the 40s chapter because that's really when our married life kind of took off. And looking at the 40s, I see two very distinct people. There was professional Kristie and there was personal Kristie. And we both went through a lot of struggle, a lot of obstacle, and a lot of growing pains in so many different ways. Professionally, well, I think I should cover personally first because the personal aspect affected the professional decisions because of geography. So meeting Brooks, my husband, in fall of 2014, we dated for a whopping 2 months and got married in January of 2015. Now, both of us had been married before. We did not have children, either of us. And at that age, you've been around the block a time or two, and you know what you'll suffer and what you won't, what you really want, and you don't waste a lot of time in just dating for fun. That doesn't seem smart. It doesn't seem like a good goal at that point for me. We both wanted to marry and to build a life. We wanted family. Our first coffee date that we had, we covered a lot of ground on conversations, very serious topics. We really got into it. And I was able to have very deep, meaningful, honest conversations with him in a way that I hadn't with anyone else. Now, largely because we had a shared history that I didn't know about. He knew. He's 4 years younger than me. And so growing up, he knew who I was because I was older in the school system and because I was active in speech and theater and pageantry. And because I'm from a small town, all of those things made the paper. So he was aware. We were even on the same swim team, and he was 4 years younger, not on my radar. That would have been creepy. So didn't know. But we had the shared history of having grown up in the same small town and swimming in the same creek when we were kids, just not together. And there's something to that. It gave us a shorthand. In fact, turns out his grandmother worked at the local bank, and Miss Joyce is who I was always told when I was a kid. And we actually drove to the bank and your mom sent you inside to make a deposit. She said, go find Miss Joyce. That was her person at the bank. So turns out that was his grandmother. Anyway, when we met, it was because he was coming out of military service and had had a rough time in losing his best friend in military service and was trying to decide what he wanted to do, go professional or go back to school, and wound up deciding to press pause. And he created an event, a fundraising event that I volunteered for. And that's how we actually met. So we had connected online via LinkedIn, I believe. We had a lot of mutual friends, but I could not remember how I knew him. I just knew that when I read about his professional career, I was like, wow, I was very impressed, and he was very smart. And so those are a couple of things that just really got me. And once we did meet and we sat down and talked, and granted, I realize I'm just talking all about my husband, but he's an important figure in the 40s era of Kristie. So when we talked, though, it turns out that our lives had crossed paths almost connecting multiple times in different cities, in different states, and in different countries. Yeah. So that was wild to me that we had crossed paths in that way. In fact, So I used to be a show host on Shop at Home, which is like a B Team QVC. They're no longer in existence, but I sold everything from Beanie Babies to skincare to collectible coins to knives and computers, all the things. I learned a lot in that role, but when I left, he literally started work there the following weekend. Like my name was still on paperwork and rosters because he was going to school full time and working full time on the weekends. Um, just it's crazy. Anyway, so meeting him and we had this shorthand. It made it very easy to be myself and to not feel like I had to filter out who I was, what I wanted. And I had already decided in my late 30s after horrible divorce and decided I'm cool. Like I'm going to be the cool aunt. I'm going to spend time getting to know who I am for a change. I'm going to invest time in me for a change and figure out what it is that I really want to do and who I want to be. And I'm not going to wait until someone picks me. Like I dated myself, if you will. I invested time. I had Friday night date night with my nieces instead of going out to clubs or bars to meet people. And I really enjoyed that. I was very much up to speed on all things Disney and Pixar. And there was popcorn and raisinets and my two nieces on Friday nights. And I loved that. I really did. I spent more time with my family and I got back to myself in that time frame. Meeting my husband, then everything kind of made sense in that as long as we worked out and we invested in our marriage and our relationship, everything else could fall around me and it really wouldn't matter. That's home to me. So he decides, woke up one morning and decides, hey, I think I'm going to get my MBA. So very quickly, in about a 30-day time span, we went from being in Louisville to back in Tennessee. He was at Vanderbilt getting his MBA, and we were focusing on trying to start a family. And we lost 3 pregnancies in the first 3 years of marriage. That was really hard for both of us in different ways. You know, for men, I don't know how men compartmentalize that because they're very task oriented. And he definitely had the task of getting his MBA because we wanted to come back to Kentucky and become a part of our community here and reconnect with family. The physical, emotional impact of losing a child was devastating to me. It's a tough conversation to have with people who don't know. And so many women don't talk about miscarriage. And I will tell you, from the moment I became pregnant, there were differences that occur rapidly in your body because it is building a human inside you. And it changes everything. It changes everything in the most beautiful way. And never made it past about 16 weeks, I think was the longest. And it was really, really hard. No one talks about it. So you don't know to really consider it. You don't know if there's anything you can do. We knew that it was a gamble because I was 38. He was 34 when we met. So that was rolling the dice. And I also knew that there could be potential genetic issues with a child should we conceive. And we were both prepared to take that willingly, lovingly, and welcome a baby. I still have to process that. And there are days that it hits me out of the blue and I lose it. And there are days that I'm fine. And there are days that I can be with newborns and coo and ah and ooh and do all those things. And there are days that it's like a gut punch. I know that I struggled thinking that it was a punishment from God, that because I wasn't a good person before, that I didn't make great choices before, this was my punishment now. You don't get a family. I believed that for quite some time. I no longer believe that, but it was very hard because the reality is that we don't have a family. We don't have a family. And we pursued adoption as a potential in that time. And I was not willing to do IVF for a couple of reasons. Largely, I knew a lot of friends that had gone through it and what they had shared with me, what the experience was like. Secondly, what do you do with all of the other eggs? There's the moral dilemma of that as well. And being someone who is pro life, as I am, that's something that had to be considered. So we wound up where we are without children. Now, that said, going back to MBA school for him, and God love him, because every time we lost a pregnancy, he still managed to take his midterms and finish with good grades and still hold me together. Both of us are allergic to cats, yet we watched a lot of stupid cat videos on Instagram. And that's something that we did to bring humor back into our life. But I'll tell you that tremendous loss can amplify whatever you are, whoever you are. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was my guy, that he was my person, my favorite during that time, because it would have been easy to not be, to not plug in. It would have been easy to take a lot of other different routes to separate yourself from that. So I'm very grateful for that. So we moved back home, and Brooks was working with the administration at the governor's office. And I was looking for work at the time and found a role in commercial training. I had previously in my 20s, which I don't even know that I mentioned that, but I was traveling all over with the auto show circuit. So I was doing a lot of product training and product demonstration, which was a natural transition into what I started doing for GE Appliances. I was a senior commercial trainer among their house of brands, all the different 5 brands under their umbrella. And so we would do large conferences, we would do product training on site. And this was in 2019 that I started with them, fall of 2019. You know what happens next? The world lost its mind and COVID happened and everything shut down, but we still had jobs to do. And that's a large, large company, large manufacturing, lots of issues took place there that they had to address. And for us on the commercial training team, we had to pivot quickly. And if you didn't know how to do virtual and do Zoom, you had to figure it out really quickly. So we were thrust into training on camera, which I was able to pull in some of my previous broadcasting experience, my shop at home experience that translated really well to what the virtual world brought us. And so would go into Appliance Park and demonstrate product from the product rooms, crickets everywhere because everyone was gone except for the required number of people in the manufacturing plant to keep things churning and to keep things moving. We started doing some partial remote hybrid work from home and kind of fell in love with being at home. I never realized, as much as I did in my 20s and 30s, to be out and about and networking and volunteering everywhere and doing all the things, being able to work from home was like, it opened up a whole new world for me. And I personally love it. I love being at home. If I leave home to come see you somewhere, you are valued. Know that because it's a big deal. I'm an introvert. I'm a high functioning introvert, or I used to be high functioning in that way. But I certainly love being at home. I love cooking. I love baking. I grow a garden. I have all the grandma hobbies without being an actual grandma. So there's that. During that time, though, with my husband, I learned resilience. I learned vulnerability and I learned to take chances. Prior to meeting my husband, I had made a decision that I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't doing the relationship thing again. I'd gotten hurt so much and it just was not something I was willing to risk again. And I just thought, hey, I'm going to be a good friend. I'll be a good sister. I'll be a good aunt. And that's that. And he changed everything. He kicked down the door with just all of his personality and he changed everything for me. We moved 7 times. So we have been married 11 years. And prior to moving here, where we currently live out in the country, we've been here almost 6 years. Prior to that, we moved 7 times. 7 times. Because when we met, I was in Louisville, he was in Brentwood, Tennessee. And then I moved in with him there once we got married. And he went to MBA school, but his little apartment was his little bachelor pad, and it was too small for both of us. So we got a bigger apartment in Franklin. And we moved there. Then we moved back and we weren't sure where we were going in Kentucky. Was it going to be Louisville? Was it going to be Lexington? So we were hanging out with his mom and grandmother in their home that he had basically grown up in. And we stayed there for a while. Then when he got his job and I got my job, we moved back to Louisville. It's just been a lot. It's been a lot of moving. And I will tell you, I have like a visceral reaction to a U-Haul van because every time up until this last move, 5.5 years ago, we packed everything and moved it ourselves, loaded in and out. We did it because that's just what we did. And I won't be doing that again. I'll tell you that. Also, it's made me realize how much stuff you can do without. If that is one lesson these last 10 years have taught me, is how little you actually need. The more stuff you have, the more you have to manage. The more stuff that you see sitting around that you don't love, you have to make decisions about, and you have decision fatigue. I don't like that for me. Now, Brooks is a little different. He does not like to have things changed. Once a chair goes where it goes, in his mind, that's where it stays. I'm one of those people that likes to move furniture around just for fun or with the seasons or because I feel like it. And that's not one of his favorite things to do. Going back to what brought us here to the country is moving from downtown. We lived in downtown Louisville in a high rise, 24th floor. And when COVID happened, the riots happened in downtown Louisville as well. And that made for a very challenging couple of months. Couldn't go home sometimes. Police would not allow you to get off the exit and go home because there was riot activity going on or they were trying to manage a situation somewhere. And so we wound up staying with my mother-in-law for about 30 days while we were looking for a home. And thank God we found a place out in the country, a little bit of property so we can plant some things. I think there might be ducks and goats in my future at some point. But for now, we're just doing the garden. But it was a challenge and it was good. And then everyone lived through COVID the way they lived through COVID. I wore the same pair of sweatpants. I think I washed them, but I did wear the same pair of sweatpants for probably a solid year and a half, maybe even two. Maybe even two. That was the 40s. It was a lot of change. It was a lot of exploration. But I will tell you the one thing, ups and downs, is having your person that's your anchor means the world. Everything can fall apart around me, but my home is with him. Is the pursuit of truth is the North Star in our marriage. I call it Jesus. He calls it something else, but pursuing the ideal and always being honest and truthful in what is real, the reality of things, that's imperative. So having that same guiding North Star, if you will, and also encouraging one another to be the best that they can be. You know, I think I heard a definition of love once that I thought was pretty accurate. In that if you really love someone, you want the absolute best for them. You want their fullest expression of themselves, even if you do not stand to benefit from it. And I think that's true. Wanting the other person to be brilliant, to be their version of brilliant, even when you may not benefit from it at all, very unselfishly, that's love. That's love. And wanting that for one another is something that has been true from day one for us. It's never been a, you can't do this, or I don't want you to do that. And it's not a you versus me thing. It's a we. That whole one flesh thing is there for a reason. I think it's the best advice possible. It's not about what you want to do, what I want to do. In a marriage, when you put people against one another, that is a recipe for disaster and misery. But when you both are shooting towards the same goal of fullest expression of yourself in honoring the marriage, in honoring God, things will still trip you up. Things will still happen that you don't plan for, but there is comfort in knowing that that person has your back. I feel freer to be who I am in my marriage than I ever felt as a single person. Let's wrap up the 40s to say that it was the best decade. It was the most devastating and the most glorious that I've encountered. And my 50s, well, I'm 54 now. We're getting into it, and I'll keep you updated on what that looks like. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is Kristie Crenshaw. Thanks for joining me at the Audacity to Age, where becoming never gets old. If you'd like more stories, insights, and encouragement for navigating life after 50 with purpose and possibility, subscribe to my Substack, The Audacity to Age, on Substack. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, review, and share it with someone you love. Until next time, keep choosing curiosity over complacency and possibility over limitation. How will you be intrepidly daring, marked by originality and verve in life post 50? That's having the audacity to age. I'll see you soon.